The community mourns the death of a recent Gering High School graduate. KNEB.TV News starts right now.
From your trusted source for news in western Nebraska and eastern Wyoming, this is KNEB.TV News. Presented by Platte Valley Companies, premier provider of financial services.
Hello, I'm Ryan Murphy. This is KNEB.TV News, powered by Platte Valley Companies. Thanks for joining me. In our top story, it was a flurry of injury crashes Monday across the valley, including one that claimed the life of a young man. The Nebraska State Patrol says that 18-year-old James Jackson Jr. of Gering succumbed to injuries as the result of a two-vehicle crash in Gering on Kimball Avenue near 10th Street shortly before 8 a.m. NSP spokesman Cody Thomas says the preliminary investigation found a northbound Ford Ranger pickup driven by Jackson was struck from behind by a Ram 2500 pickup driven by 44-year-old Gideon Bruner of rural Gering. Jackson was pronounced deceased at the scene, and Bruner was taken to Regional West with serious injuries after being ejected from his vehicle. The crash remains under investigation, and the NSP is conducting a full crash reconstruction investigation. And another collision occurred mid-morning yesterday between a semi and SUV in the Wildcat Hills on Highway 71, 5 miles south of Gering, that sent one person to the hospital. Scottsbluff County Sheriff Mark Overman tells KNEB News that the preliminary investigation found that the semi was southbound just past the Old Stage Hill Road intersection when the SUV, which had been on the southbound shoulder, performed a U-turn in front of the semi. The driver of the semi was not injured, but the driver of the Jeep was taken from the scene by Regional West EMS with what the sheriff characterized as serious injuries. Overman says driver impairment in that case is being investigated as a possible contributing factor. And around 11:30, two people suffered serious injuries in yet another accident when their motorcycle collided with a pickup on Highway 26 east of Mitchell. The Nebraska State Patrol says a Toyota pickup was eastbound in the travel lane and attempted to turn north onto County Road 11 and was struck by the motorcycle, which was in the eastbound passing lane. The motorcycle occupants were taken from the scene by EMS to Regional West, while the driver of the pickup refused treatment for minor injuries. Names in the last two accidents have yet to be released as of broadcast time. We'll have more news right after this.
Looking for free instead of fees? Platte Valley Bank can help you keep your finances moving forward with no ATM fees. Whether you're headed to the lake, the mountains, or just to the grocery store, you can enjoy the freedom of free ATM access anywhere, anytime. Platte Valley Bank. You belong here.
Life is crazy. Pain is stressful. How can anybody concentrate with these busy schedules? Now you can. This is Ben Moravec coming to you from Hydrozen, a float therapy business right here in Scottsbluff. I'm here today to let you know we now have memberships for $49 monthly. You can guarantee yourself at least one float per month. You know how floating keeps your muscles relaxed, your joints relieved, and your brain clear to think? Now you can float at a reduced rate each month. Inquire today at hydrozenfloat.com or call us at 308-63-FLOAT. Hydrozen. Unplug and recharge.
Welcome back. Nebraska Public Power District has advanced to Phase 2 of a feasibility study for potential sites for advanced small modular reactors in Nebraska. Funded by a $1 million grant from the Nebraska legislature, the study initially screened potential sites statewide. NPPD President and CEO Tom Kent told reporters that SMRs have a number of advantages compared to traditional nuclear power facilities.
Their designs have safety features that rely on things like natural circulation and the size of the water tank and all those kinds of things that work together so that you can safely operate that facility and manage the safety of the facility when it's shut down using less pumps and motors. So they're a simpler design. They have less pumps, less motors, less valves, all those kinds of things that make them simpler, easier to operate, improves the reliability over time.
16 sites have been identified to proceed to the second phase of the feasibility study, including near Rushville, Sutherland, and Valentine. Kent noted that Phase 2 will involve detailed technical and environmental evaluations of those locations, and says community support will be crucial as the list narrows down to just a handful of sites. And Nebraska Attorney General Mike Hilgers and a coalition of 15 state attorney generals, led by Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach, filed a lawsuit in federal court to stop the Biden-Harris administration from extending Obamacare to illegal aliens. The final plan, set to take effect November 1st, would make more than 200,000 DACA recipients, including 2,400 from Nebraska, eligible for taxpayer-subsidized health plans. Hilger says the Biden-Harris administration has once again violated federal laws in its attempt to expand the reach of federal government at the expense of law-abiding Americans.
I imagined retirement in a place where we could enjoy our golden years, where adventure and friendship are the only items on the schedule. The Garden Homes at Northfield gives us the luxury we planned for and peace of mind when it comes to convenience, safety, and comfort. We never have to stop and think about the day-to-day upkeep. We love to explore abroad, but most importantly in our backyard. So much to do, so much to see. Here at Northfield, we get the protection of life care, incredible tax benefits, and secured rates for aging services. It's peaceful, knowing that if our needs change, we'll be taken care of. And most importantly, that our kids will never have to make any tough decisions. There never seemed to be enough time to do all the things we wanted. Now we get to focus our energy on enjoying what this community has to offer. At the Garden Homes, life is ours again. A place we had dreamed about. A chance to focus on us.
Tri-City Stormwater presents Stormwater 101, an illicit discharge.
The incredible Renewal by Anderson Dog Days of Summer Sale is here, and I will sit up and shake for this one. It's the best offer ever for new windows and doors. Please listen to this. You get 20% off, an additional 5% off if purchased on the initial consultation. No payments for 24 months, 2 whole years, no payments. Please visit rbawyoming.com. Call today to schedule your free in-home consultation. Don't wait. This deal ends August 31st. 2 years, no payments. That's doggone awesome.
This is KNEB.TV Ag News from the Scottsbluff Body and Paint Ag Desk. Scottsbluff Body and Paint, you're driving home our reputation.
Welcome to this week's Nebraska Soybean Board Weekly Market Roundup, which is brought to you by Nebraska soybean farmers and their checkoff. I'm Bryce Duska today, filling in for Susan Littlefield, and there's really no sugarcoating about the markets this week. Another challenging week, but joining us to discuss all of that is going to be Arlen Suderman. Right after this break, we'll be back with that conversation coming up next.
It may be small, but this little bean fuels a lot of power. It powers a food industry as a top source of protein. It's a fuel that powers diesel engines with fewer emissions. It powers a state economy and bottom lines. And it powers the rest of the world as a top Nebraska export. Yeah, it may be small, but we're finding more ways for this little bean to power Nebraska.
And welcome back to the weekly market roundup. Arlen Suderman, Chief Commodities Economist with StoneX, is our guest. He joins us here on the screen. Arlen, I appreciate you joining us here at a week that started out quite troublesome as we opened things up, particularly in the stock markets on Monday. As we look back at the week that it was, maybe starting at the stock market, describe how you saw things, and we'll talk about how that spilled over to what happened in the grain and perhaps the livestock markets as well.
Yeah, we really need to go back to the previous week, and it was the day of the Federal Reserve meeting. That same day prior to the Federal Reserve announcing its decision we saw the Bank of Japan surprise the market with a rate hike, the largest rate hike they had done in 15 years, lifted their benchmark interest rate into positive territory for the first time in 8 years. That's right, they'd had negative interest rates for the last 8 years. During that time, many investors in Japan had taken a tremendous amount of money and implemented what's called the yen carry trade, where they borrow against the yen to invest in the US markets. So at negative interest rates, they could invest and sell the yen to buy dollars to invest in our markets. That made them the largest foreign holder of US debt, as well as major players in our equity markets. So when you have them doing that, and then our Fed meeting essentially confirming expectations to cut rates starting in September, that meant that it was no longer profitable to stay in that carry trade. They started unwinding that. People misinterpreted what was happening as a disappointment in the Fed. And then the jobs report on Friday being soft, they said, oh, it must mean we're going to recession. And the piling on of selling not only happened here, but around the world as a result. Things have stabilized now, but for a while, what that really did is reinforce the commodity deflation mode for the funds. Like, hey, if we're going into recession, nobody's going to want commodities. So not only get rid of them, but get short on them. And so for those few commodities like live cattle futures, where they still held a long or ownership position, they were quickly liquidating those.
Yeah, we'll talk about livestock maybe here in a second. Arlen, talk about where corn and soybeans are as we sit here on the 9th of August. December corn trading the lowest December prices in over 3.5 years, similar to corn. November beans trading near their lowest level over the 3.5 years. And interestingly, cash prices almost $2 a bushel lower than what USDA production cost estimates are for 2024. Size up the grains in particular. What are you seeing in particular those two markets?
Yeah, rather painful when you consider the level of input costs for this crop, and the input for the 24 crop being higher than even the previous year, and we're still trying to get rid of last year's production as well. So if you look at this going into the August report, December corn breaking below $4, November soybeans below the $10 mark, national average cash right now with a 3 on it in front of corn, and a 9 on in front of it. And for soybeans, not a good place you want to be. So what can we expect out of this report and its reaction? You get surprises in either direction from the August report, but typically it's much more difficult to get a bullish enough surprise from USDA in the August report to really convince the market that the bottom is in. The more likely scenario is that you continue lower here until the market is confident is fully priced in the size of the crops. And considering the generally favorable weather pattern we've had for the bulk of the Midwest for July and now much of August, the expectation is higher estimates today, meaning bigger crops get bigger in the September report.
As you and I are visiting here on Friday, this broadcast coming out today and tomorrow, let's talk about the Friday trade. How were traders looking at things ahead of that report and getting themselves positioned?
Well, knowing USDA's tendency for surprises, they already held record to near record short positions in these commodities. So we saw them covering some of that just in case there is a surprise. We did get a little bit of support for wheat that gave us double-digit gains overnight based on a shrinking European crop. And that's something for longer term we need to keep in mind, because the Black Sea crop has come in much smaller than expected. And that's pretty much been factored in now. We feel pretty comfortable what that is, with Russia's crop around 83 million metric tons. Europe's crop, though, USDA has not fully accounted for the lost production there and some of the lost quality. That's more of a factor for the second half of the marketing year for U.S. wheat balance sheets. The same thing as we look at corn, the lost corn production in the Black Sea, expectations of a smaller Argentine corn crop this year and even smaller next year as they shift away from corn acres towards soybeans. But again, that's more last half of the marketing year factor. That's something to look forward down the road when we start to see exports start to improve.
You're just joining us on the weekly market roundup, brought to you by the Nebraska Soybean Board. Arlen Suderman, Chief Commodities Economist with StoneX, is our guest. And Arlen, we're talking a little bit about what's going to be coming ahead with Monday's WASDE report coming out from USDA. An interesting note about that is this is the first year that USDA could change planted acreage estimates in that August WASDE report without a resurvey. What are some of the implications of that new approach?
Well, it's a little bit difficult to know which way they can be because there are those who will argue with good facts behind them that the yields or acreage should go down. And because of the slow planting, it just didn't get planted. And there are those who are making an argument for acreage to go up and got good arguments behind it. And without a resurvey, we really don't have a handle on which way it'll go. Um, th- so there could be a surprise. But what I would say in this case is that changes in yield will probably have a bigger impact on the balance sheet as we go through this fall than changes in acreage. So let's not get distracted by it too much. I do expect harvested acreage to go somewhat down because of some of the flooding problems that we've had in the northwestern Midwest and the major hailstorms that we had in Nebraska. It's interesting to note this week we discovered, USDA never really published it, but we discovered a study they did on the lost acreage due to flooding back in June due to those record rainfalls that we saw in northwestern Iowa, southeastern South Dakota, northeast Nebraska, and southern Minnesota. And USDA's numbers on that are 70,000 corn acres and 46,000 soybean acres lost. Those numbers, I think, are lower than most people would have thought, but those are numbers we can anticipate USDA reducing harvested acreage due to that problem there.
Yeah, appreciate your insights on that. Arlen, you were talking a little about livestock, and they were kind of the spillover damage due to what was happening in the stock markets. Let's pick up the conversation as things kind of tumbled there Monday, Tuesday. We're able to see things close a little bit higher here on a Friday.
Yeah, when we look at the hog market, it really indications now that we've hit our seasonal peak in both product prices and in cash prices. We saw the cash index or the hogs start to work lower over this past week, very incrementally, but moving in that direction. So the funds kind of shifting their positions and starting to liquidate some of their length. Cattle market really took a big hit to start the week as the stock market was crashing. Fears that with the economy feared to be going into recession as they were tying the break in the stock market to recession fears that the consumer wouldn't want to pay up for the higher cuts of meat. And live cattle, as I said earlier, was one of the markets where the funds still had considerable length. And so they were liquidating that length in that market. But when the stock market recovered, live cattle futures didn't recover near as much. And so what we ended up seeing is cash trade moving lower, $3 to $5 lower in the north, about $2 to $3 lower in the south, taking advantage of the basis opportunities. The cash still trading above the board, but the board seems to be comfortable with that. We did finish on a more positive note at the end of the week as the board trying to catch up a little bit to the cash, though.
All right, Arlen, wanted to throw another question out your way, kind of some local news for our listeners and viewers in Nebraska. This week, it was announced that a site was selected in the state for a sustainable aviation fuel production plant using biomass feedstocks. This is the investment reported. Construction could run around $5 billion. Serious investment made potentially here in the state of Nebraska. Want to get your thoughts on sustainable aviation fuel? A lot of news on that over the last 6 months or so, particularly around some tax credits. What's your outlook though for that market?
The big driver is the tax credits, and the big driver of the tax credits really goes back to Europe because Europe is far ahead in trying to move the aviation industry into a more green energy type of scenario. And there's not a lot of comfort with electricity. So therefore, liquid biofuels is the leader, sustainable aviation fuels. The question is, what will the feedstock be? And right now, the US EPA is not giving a sufficient credit for our ag commodities to be that feedstock. Now, if we're able to get the pipeline moving through that takes those carbons, sequesters that carbon, and puts it underground, that we believe would be enough at this point to get an environmental score high enough to get a credit for ethanol to price in as a feedstock. That would be big for the ethanol industry as we see it. That's not a done deal by any means. We're certainly seeing progress and momentum in that direction. The current administration's not supporting anything more than that. We don't know a lot about the potential Harris administration policies the Trump administration policies, we don't see much different from the Biden administration. Harris administration, we would anticipate would still be going maybe even more heavily toward electric vehicles. So therefore, they may not necessarily be behind the liquid biofuels and the support for ethanol as a feedstock either.
Arlen Suderman with StoneX, our guest today here on the Nebraska Soybean Board Weekly Market Roundup. Arlen, thanks very much for the time. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Bryce.
Welcome to Kelly's Liquor, your liquor cabinet. Whether you're a wine enthusiast, a whiskey sommelier, a tequila connoisseur, or you just love your beer, Kelly's has the best selection of what you're looking for. Family owned and operated since 1946 and right on 27th Street in Scottsbluff. Come see us today at Kelly's Liquor, your liquor cabinet. And remember to be a good neighbor. Don't drink and drive. Kelly's Liquor, West 27th Street in Scottsbluff.
Let's take a look at your community calendar, brought to you by Riverstone Bank. The community calendar is brought to you by Riverstone Bank. We're local and we love our community.
Better sleep and better health can be found at Western Sleep Medicine in Gering. Since 2006, Western Sleep Medicine has offered the lowest cost sleep testing either in their independent sleep laboratory or the privacy of your own home. You have control over your health care and your out-of-pocket cost. All insurance is accepted for a much lower cost than the regional option. If you need a sleep study, ask for Western Sleep Medicine. They've helped thousands of people over the years and want to help you. Western Sleep Medicine. Better sleep, better health.
Tired of feeling stuck? Not sure if you are on the right track? Platte Valley Bank can help keep your finances moving forward with checking account options to fit your lifestyle and an online account chooser to make finding the right account easy. Control your financial future with helpful budgeting tools and automatic savings plans. Now is the time to enjoy the ride with Platte Valley Bank. You belong here.
And finally tonight, staff at the Riverside Discovery Center has announced the passing of their 38-year-old spider monkey, Scooty. She has been part of the zoo for nearly 29 years, and over the decades, she touched the lives of countless guests and zoo staff. Her caretakers were lucky to have had as much time with her as they did. The species typically lives an average of 27 years in the wild and 25 to 30 years in human care. Well, that does it for us this time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there. We'll see you here next time.